More great shows or join the team at sport-social.co.uk.
Hello, welcome back to Masterclass, the Manchester United Tactical Podcast. I'm your host, Haider Rubbani. I'm joined by Rob Blanchette. As always, guys, give us a follow on at TF Masterclass. Give myself a follow on at Haider_Rubbani. And give Rob a follow on at _Rob_B. United were outclassed, outthought, everything you can think about, Rob. We saw the absolute gulf in class between Manchester United and Man City. And this has been happening for a decade now. And it's almost come to a head. That 4-1 defeat was humiliating, if I'm completely honest with you. The players should be ashamed of themselves. Head down, walking, City passing the ball around, doing olés. It was just awful. For 60 minutes, the tactics were spot on. But it just fell apart. And Man United have spent 1.2 billion in the last 10 years or so. City have spent a similar amount. And we have nothing to show for it compared to Manchester City. A huge job for the next manager. And we're going to talk about the possible next manager. A huge job in terms of fixing and reversing the issues that we've got. United in a really difficult position. And we're going to break it all down today with a level head, because there's going to be a lot of screaming, a lot of shouting from other channels. And we're not going to do that today. But until the Glazers go, realistically, Rob, United are going to be in this horrible, vicious cycle.
Well, we can't get rid of the Glazers. First point. Second point, 1.2 billion spent by both football clubs in the last 10 years. What's the difference there? City bought good players. Man United bought shirt sellers. So we've talked about this on this show before. We're going to talk about it again today and kind of apply the science. You can't get rid of the Glazers. So again, it's a cycle that we can't really discuss. It's up to the Glazers to find the answers. So this is the whole thing, is that we've seen it in football clubs in the past. Liverpool did it. We talked about Manchester City did it, about how you restructure. You have to find ways to win through your structure. So we'll go into that later on when we talk about new manager. You called it an embarrassment, and it was an embarrassment. And I think the thing is that when you look at the two teams on the football pitch, there is a gulf in class when you look at quality versus application. So you can have all the most beautiful footballers in the world in your team, but unless you apply the tactics correctly for 90 minutes, even if you don't do it for 5 minutes, Haider, or 10 minutes, there's a good chance you'll lose the game. But what's happening with Manchester United is that these players don't apply it for like whole halves of football. So the first half, they did all right. They got it right. They did the counter press. It was a 4-2-2 shape. We'll go into that a little bit more in a minute. Typical gegenpressing shape. It wasn't a 4-4-2, as some people have said. And United were rocking and rolling. When they were winning the ball in midfield, they were getting off and they were doing it. They were ready. You could see it was a game plan. And Man City were okay. They were the slightly better team in that first half. They could have gone in with a bigger lead. But at the same time, it could have been level at halftime, couldn't it? I think we're all kind of agreed on that. But the second half, we saw all the bad things that we've talked about in this show for the last year all manifest itself in like one big go. The issues with Wan-Bissaka, the issues with Lindelof, the issues with Maguire, how they work together as a chemical outfit with the back four, how McFred struggle in those moments because they've got to look after everyone. And then you kind of look at the attack and it's non-existent because you can't get the ball forward anymore. Manchester United had an XG of 0 in the second half. Now, we can sit here and say, pontificate, oh, it's not acceptable. But we have to look at why. What is going on with Man United? Is this tactical or is this the players? It's the same thing we always do, trying to find that swinging pendulum about where is it? In the middle somewhere? No, it's the players. It's the players now. So I think with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, there were right reasons for us to talk about some of the tactical anomalies, being very stuck to 4-2-3-1, not finding ways to dig yourself out of trouble. But ironically, Haider, last year when we were talking about that, Man United came second in the league. So what's happened this year, we can't do it all in one show, and we're not going to. But I think you can kind of compare and contrast what happened against Man City yesterday and see where the big golfing class is with his players, because the big difference is work rate. There's a big difference between how Man City work and work to the final moment. And you even saw Pep in the last 5 minutes orchestrating the band from the halfway line because you want his players to work harder. And they'd won the game already. And Manchester United just cannot do it. Now, that is not Ralph Rangnick's fault. It's not Ralph Rangnick's fault, and it's not a tactical issue. That's about players taking responsibility for their jobs.
You hit the nail on the head, and something I actually was saying to a few people today is that Liverpool and Manchester City might have some of the best players, Rob. They also work harder than anyone else. They're smart, they're well drilled. And, Rangnick did set United up to press high. We were compact in that first half. It was a decent performance. It just absolutely fell apart. On the screen, we've obviously got the graphic here from who scored, and we're just having a look at the starting formations. And Man United did go with Bruno Fernandes. He wasn't playing alone up front as a false nine. It was quite odd, wasn't it, to see him and Pogba both actually up top. I thought that was a little odd. I didn't think Pogba looked comfortable, to be honest. I wasn't too sure about him pressing at the top of the pitch, but. Look, United, every time they got the ball in that first half, they were able to work it nicely. They had some nice chances. I mean, Sancho scored a fantastic goal. Should have got a second one, which arguably was easier. But there was some nice combination play in the final third. But time and time again, Rob, this defense, Wan-Bissaka, Lindelof, Maguire, and Telles, shocking. Almost the 2 goals for De Bruyne were almost carbon copy. City overloaded those wide areas. They played in the channels, and it was so easy for them to create chances. United, unfortunately, it doesn't matter how good you are going forward. If you can't keep the ball out of the net in your own net, then you're never going to win football matches.
Yeah, look, tactically, United played with the mid-block, and that's exactly what they should have done. They played with the mid-block. They met Manchester City's midfield. They tried to make sure City couldn't overload, and what happened? As the game went on, United became more tired, and they were just getting completely done by overloads on the left-hand side. The whole game took place in front of Victor Lindelof and Aaron Wan-Bissaka, the whole match. This is where you win the game and you lose the game. If you get that bit right, if you can fight them, and if you can stay in possession of the ball there and stay in position when you need to be, then you can stop Manchester City. The problem was they just got fragmented over and over again. So you saw that. The mid-block, you said there about Paul Pogba, it didn't really surprise me that Paul Pogba was playing in that position. Now, we know he's not a centre forward, but you're playing 2 false positions. That's really what the 4-2-2-2 is. Kind of 2 6s and 4 10s. That's really the methodology of playing that, and about overloading yourself, trying to get the ball and win it and go quickly. Now, when Man United scored, it worked perfectly, didn't it? They got the ball. Paul Pogba was wide. He gets it across to Jadon. Jadon takes the touch, comes inside, scores. Goal. That's what you're looking for. So it did work in that moment. The problem is that Man City reset and then took over the game, and Man United had no answers to it.
I mean, there's a comment here from Juan saying that since Ralph came in, we've looked like we have a plan, but once the opposition scores, the weak mentality of the team begins to show and we are defeated. It's as you said earlier on in the 100%. Show, that what you're seeing right now is that you're seeing there is a plan. We are more structured. We went to Manchester City, Rob, in that first half, and we went and played. We were dangerous, and it's the mentality. The same thing. The Jekyll and Hyde first half play well, second half play poorly. Something I do want to touch upon is that United couldn't deal with City's sustained pressure, around United's box, and that's something which causes problems for our defenders, and it makes them make mistakes, and they are just littered with mistakes. It's so frustrating because every single week it's the same mistakes that are being made by the players at the back. And at what point, we will talk about 3 players that should probably get sold when the new manager comes in. But how are you meant to build as a manager like Rangnick when the players are just not, learning from those mistakes consistently? It just kills momentum and it kills the side.
Well, this is what Ralph has to do when he's the coach, is to find a way to teach these guys what to do, but then give them the authority and empower them to iron those mistakes out. That's how it works, So we've talked about what Aaron Wan-Bissaka does well and doesn't do well until we're blue in the face. We've talked about Victor Lindelof in a very positive manner this year, but the issues are still there, Haider. These players make these mistakes over and over and over and over again. It doesn't stop. And there were core weaknesses that what happens is when they occur, that they lose all their motivation and power because they don't trust each other anymore. And that's the problem. So when you've got 11 guys out there on a football pitch and you've got to go and, take swords out together and fight and go for it, you have to trust each other. And what you saw yesterday was that trust just dissipate very quickly when the mistakes set in, because it's the same problems, the channel between those two on that right-hand side, outside and inside. Wan-Bissaka, do I stick or twist? Lindelof, do I go forward and meet the player who's a false nine and come in deeper, or do I hold my position? Now, these players should know all of this. In your preparation, you know what Man City are going to do. You know why Man City are good. They are the best team in the world. So you've got to be perfect. But what you see with this Man United team is that, are you close to perfection or not? It's not even close. It's not close. You've got to have your best game of the season against Man City, or you're going to ship 4. And that's just what happened. So I do think, again, like United fans, will be upset about individuals. I've had a lot of jive talked about Ralph and systems and all of these things. And it's crazy, lots of people kind of again saying, if Solskjaer was manager, it would be better.
Nonsense.
None of this counts. None of this matters anymore. What really matters is how do you approach each game going forward, but what's the next manager going to do? Because if Ten Hag was parachuted in today and was a manager, is this fixed? No, it's not, because there's so many issues. So we're going to go through it and kind of look at why City won the game, because I think obviously this is what this podcast is about. But we're then going to kind of take it a little bit forward and say really the 3 that need to go quickly. And I'm talking about in the summer, because it's about your wage bill. You have to balance your wage bill so you can then go and buy in the transfer market. But then we'll talk a little bit more also about Ten Hag, because I think he's the undoubted front runner as it stands now. I think United are going a little bit cooler on Pochettino. It's not saying he won't get the job, but Ten Hag is definitely the favourite. But then you've got to give Ten Hag a chance, because Ten Hag's actually very similar to Ranić, a kind of expressive thinker, understands systems, wants flexibility and wants work, hard work. And this lot are still joggers. They love a good jog, don't they? When Lindelof put his head in there and got beaten by Foden, he spun round and watched the play happen. He didn't run back. He just had a little jog back into the box. But they all do it. It's not just Lindelof. It's all of them. They all have that in them. So this has to change, doesn't it? Because it's a cultural change. And it has to happen in the next kind of 6 months. It's not going to happen overnight, but it's got to happen in the next 6 months. Otherwise, you start next season and you're miles off the top 4.
Very, very true. Guys, a lot of you in the chat, in the live chat today, do hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. If you see us on Twitter as well, please give it a retweet. All your support is really, really helpful for the show.
I love the comment there about Dallas Cowboys and New York Yankees, because I've used that one before. We are the Yankees, definitely, 100%. It's a huge, huge club, huge brand, but why can't you get it right on the pitch? Well, it's because of the ownerships. The ownerships do not find a way to win. So you can sell all the shirts until you're blue in the face and all the baseball caps saying Yankees on it, but does that mean you're a top team? Not necessarily.
Absolutely. And we've got the graphic up here from Sky Sports. I'm sure a lot of you who are watching yesterday saw this, and this is really damning. Since Manchester United won their last title in 2012-2013, look at this, Rob. City have won 4 Premier Leagues. They've won 11 major trophies. United have won 3. That was all in the Jose and the LVG era. That's the even more crazy thing. And they were some pretty dour times at times. But really, that second season in Jose, especially when we were going for the title, was okay. Looking at average points as well, 84 average points for City per season, United 69. 2 managers, City, United 5. And here's the one we were talking about earlier, the money spent, pretty much exactly the same. And what have United got to show for it? Good comment here from Alan Rob saying, difference is Manchester City have football minds making decisions. United have bankers. Replacing Woodward with Arnold is useless because the Glazers should know better but don't care about winning trophies. And that's essentially where it starts. It's going to be interesting to see because, Arnold has been saying some of the right things. I'll believe it when I see it, but he has been saying things that are a bit more encouraging than Woodward. He wants to have a footballing structure, and then the commercial structure is a commercial structure. I think a lot of it counts on who United bring in next, because if they go and bring in someone and don't bring in, let's say, bring in Ten Hag and don't bring in the support and the structure around him, then he's just going to flounder like every other manager has since. And that's why, it's gonna take years, to be honest. We're looking at 2 or 3 years building. It's what we thought was happening under Solskjaer. We're looking at this squad now, and it's almost even worse, the squad in terms of attitude, than it was when Jose Mourinho went. So it's very, very difficult. But let's move on now to the game. And this is one of De Bruyne's goals, and calamity, absolute calamity of. I mean, look at the players. Look at Maguire lying across the floor. Shocking goal to give away. So easy for Kevin De Bruyne. Back four, communication problems, mistakes, the same issues consistently. United have to replace these guys. They're not good enough for Manchester United.
They're not good enough. And I think that's actually Tellers on the floor. As Harry just stood there watching the ball go in the back of the net after he dummied it. It went through his legs. And then it obviously went through his legs again with one of the other goals. The thing is, when you look at this, the reason why I gave you this slide and said I wanted to use this slide is to just show the difference in the organisation. Is that City there have got 3 players spaced out to make sure that that rebound goes in the back of the net. And Man United are just all over the place. And this is kind of how the game panned out, is that United just lost all confidence in themselves, what they do. So they've got a good plan. We could see the plan was working. But yet in these vital moments, these crucial moments where even Scott McTominay said after the game, it's simplicity. City weren't doing anything like world class. It was just like, get the ball wide, double up on a man, cross the ball and put it in the net, like the real basics of football. So that City were not doing anything that was magical. It was just that Man United were not doing their jobs. So I feel sorry for David De Gea here because he's got literally no protection. And that's how the second half panned out, is that City found a way to exert their character over Manchester United's. And this is the thing about this team, is that they are soft. They lack characters, collective character, Haider, and individual characters. Forget the days of Roy Keane and Brian Robson, and we talk about these things with stars in our eyes and all of this. Forget all of that. We're not talking about character in that mold. We're just talking about going out there and being a bunch of footballers playing together. That's all it is. Go out there, trust each other, do the work in the week, and then end up on a football pitch and try your best. And again, you're going to get accused, aren't you, at the end of the game, that you didn't try. And I saw Scott McTominay was kind of after the game, they talked about it to him. And he said, he didn't want to go down the route. He said, we do care. We honestly do, but we failed. And that is what's important, that they know they failed. So you've got to go and fix it, haven't you? But this is not the first time. We've seen it through the Ole Gunnar Solskjaer period, this season I'm talking about. We're now seeing it with Ralf Rangnick, 2 very different coaches, 2 very different approaches in terms of Ole, who gave the players cuddles and looked after them and led them, and Ralf, who's absolutely strategic.
Rob, can I just quickly interrupt you, because the comment is exactly what you're saying here. This is from Alan saying, problem is Jose had to go, but Solskjaer took it too far in the other direction by always protecting the players no matter what. How clearly awful they were. There is zero accountability in that team. And that's exactly the point you're trying to make. It's difficult because I don't think Ole was doing it in a way. I think he was trying his best to, after Jose, to almost put that arm around the shoulder, and that's how he felt was right. But these lads don't take any accountability at all. And unfortunately, you've got a bunch of spoilt footballers who, as soon as it gets difficult, the head goes down. As soon as they get dropped, they want to leave. How can you build a club, or a successful team around people that aren't willing to, aren't willing to take on the challenge and fight for their place?
I think really do want to kind of detach a lot of the kind of media narrative that we've heard today and off the back of the game to what is reality, because I'm not going to go down the route that I don't think the players care. I think the players do care. It's just about, why are you not performing? This is kind of in a nutshell. And the reason why I think it's difficult for this bunch of Man United players to show anything is that this manager's not going to be manager in 2 months. So what's the point in turning up for work and being your best? So, again, we would look at it and go, oh, yeah, but, football, love the club, love the badge. This manager's not going to be a manager in 2 months. So what's the point? So this is how football clubs work. I was talking to Mark Bostich about this in years gone by. He's on my other podcast. And we talked about it when Fergie left the first time, and the United dressing room, who were all perennial winners, top players, always did it, all went, we're not doing anything now because he's leaving. And then when he stayed, they all went, oh, they all were really, kind of upset and scared. Now, that was 25 years ago, Haider, with the most successful team in history. So, now we've got a team that's not nearly as good as that. And people are saying, well, why is this happening? The reason why it's happening is Man United have created this situation. They put in an interim who is a very good tactical, technical coach, but you've killed him already. You chopped his legs off.
He's a floundering duck. That's it.
It's his fault. People say it's his fault. Excuse me. And it's kind of like people say, well, the tactics of this, that, or the other. 4-4-2 this, 4-2-2-2 that. No, it's about how Man United set up the core of their team as a business and as a football club. And again, they failed, haven't they? Because this is the reoccurring theme. Jose Mourinho got second, and then didn't get the back in and got sacked. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer got second. Got signings, got Ronaldo, but came second last year, then got sacked. This is the pattern that Man United are working around. They gave this job to Rangnick, and I still think that what Fred said the other day in the Champions League is the most telling part, where he said, yep, United brought in an interim manager. I don't really agree with it because it's difficult to know what you're supposed to be doing at the end of the season. And next summer, it's like which one of us players will be sold and who will be staying. Now that's the real narrative. So forget what you're reading in the press about Rashford wants to leave, Martial doesn't like being there, Donny van de Beek was upset. Forget all of that. The issue is the board and how the board structured a football club, because they're the bosses. They're the ones who actually create the working conditions. And I think that's a huge issue, is that this lot are going, well, yeah, it didn't work for us this week, but I am on 200 grand a week, so I'll just wait till the next manager comes in. And lots of footballers think like that. And some Man United superstars in years gone by used to think like that.
Yeah, but Rob, those players gone by have a little bit of credit in the bank. They won the lot. They won it all. I'm not saying it's right, whether it's right or wrong. These lot have not achieved anything. And
there's no credit in the bank for anyone. If you lose games or you don't turn up for whatever reason, it's on you. Yeah, it is on you. So I'm not saying take the blame away from them. They're 100% to blame, but you've also got to put this into human terms about why it's not working. So it can't just be about Bruno Fernandes running around, throwing his arms up, running around, because it doesn't win you games, Haider.
Rob, this isn't the first time this set of players have done that as a point. They did it with
exactly. So this is on the players, and this is why we're going down this route, because the whole point is that there's a human element to this, but there's also who is responsible overall. The Manchester United board. If you spend £1.2 million on players and you get the wrong players, that is on you. Don't just blame the players for results. Of course, you want them to play harder, you want them to be better, etc. You buy Ronaldo, the greatest striker of all time, and you tell the world, that's it, we're gonna win the title now. No, you are not. You're not going to win the title because you're still making the wrong signings 10 years on.
It's a vicious cycle. We're going to move on now. And just before we do that, I just want to credit Y Scout because, they've done some fantastic graphics that we're going to use today. We're going to break down, instead of breaking down each goal, we're actually just going to break down some key sort of, slides, aren't we, Rob, to show how Manchester City beat Manchester United. So, guys, as always, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and, share this around with all your friends. But, Rob, let's start with this first graphic up here on the screen. United are in that 4-2-2-2 shape. I've seen a lot of people, like we said earlier, saying 4-4-2. I didn't think it was a 4-4-2, to be honest. But as we said, City exploited those wide areas. And Grealish was actually a very interesting and a very smart move by Pep, because he likes to occupy, sort of the half spaces or the channel. And he's an excellent dribbler. And Wan-Bissaka had a very difficult side. João Cancelo, again, obviously bombing forward, very technically gifted, and Bernardo as well. Talk to me a little bit about how City, sort of got the better of Manchester United. And Rangnick didn't really, it's not that he didn't have an answer, but I think, it was very, very difficult looking at both sides. Those wide areas are getting absolutely stretched.
Yeah, so this is before Manchester United equalised. So City are 1-0 up. And you can see that at this stage, that possession was still about 50-50. Now, in the last 15 minutes of the game, Manchester United had possession of 8% of the ball. 8%, which is laughable, embarrassing, but really kind of showed how the game went. But just looking at the setup here, you can kind of see how the 4-2-2-2 works in terms of gegenpressing style. So what happens is that you create this kind of mid-block. So everything's in the middle there, isn't it? There's no width, really. The back four are pressing up high, but they haven't got anyone to mark. Foden's just kind of stood off in that false position. But as you mentioned there, Jack Grealish. Now, Jack Grealish hasn't been great for Man City. Let's be honest. He's been all right, not been terrible, but he hasn't been a £100 million player. But what does Jack Grealish like to do? He likes to stand out on that left wing. That's what he used to do at Villa. He likes to get the ball in that position. So that's why he was played. Go and stand there and make Aaron Wan-Bissaka look at you and make sure that you're there and scare him a little bit. Because why? Because Cancelo is going to overlap or run into that middle space there, talking about half spaces. When you look at the shape of United in this 4-2-2-2, it was working at this point because they got the spacing correct. They didn't allow City to really play through them. But what City started to do towards the end of the first half, and when they got their second goal, was that they were creating overloads on the left. So as you just said there, Cancelo, Silva, Grealish, all within 5-10 yards of each other. And then if you look where Foden is, that means City are outnumbering Lindelof and Wan-Bissaka there 4-2. Now, do I like those odds? No. What can you do to help that? Well, you could drop McTominay back in there. And that's really what Ralph was trying to do. But as we'll show later on with some of the other graphs, an impossible job for a number 6 to do, to go and make up the extra number, because they're on the front foot and you're on the back foot. And there's a lot of space behind that Man United back four. What's the other problem? Your back four is slow, both mentally and physically. You got no recovery pace. Means that if Grealish picks the lock, Foden's just going to go into the empty space, isn't he? And he's going to hurt you. But then you look on the other side here. Mahrez wasn't even really involved in the game at this point. Obviously, he got two in the match. But where De Bruyne is, and you can't mark him, because the space between the lines of where Harry Maguire is, and I think on this side here where you've got Fred, that gap's about 20 yards. If you had a more athletic centre-back, he would be at least Varane. 15 yards further forward. Well, Varane or just someone else, anyone that can run. Haider, this is the thing. The issue with Maguire is that all the things that he's good at, and he is good at some things, the one big thing that he's really bad at is running. His mobility is poor. So what's he doing here? Yeah. So what's Ralph done here? Ralph's put them as a kind of almost as a flat back four to look after each other, to look after the space. But ideally in this system, you want Maguire pushing up to De Bruyne, because then Mahrez is taken care of by Telles, and your centre-back is taking care of the only other player that can break forward, which is De Bruyne. And that leaves then Lindelof one-on-one with Foden. So it helps, doesn't it? But United can't do that because their two centre-backs are slow. Now, you did lose Varane before the game to COVID. You lost Luke Shaw to COVID before the game. And those two changes, I think, were definitive. Like losing those two players in terms of what they do good, their skill set, they've not always been great, but they would have helped a lot more in the system. But it's a very, very difficult day for Harry Maguire, because I think everything around him was chaotic and he can't run to get the recovery pace back. He hasn't got it. It's not in his armour. And that makes it very, very tricky for United.
And that's the thing with Maguire, and we will talk about him a little bit later on, Rob, but you don't have to be quick to be a top centre back. There's a lot of centre backs that didn't have the pace. But
I think you do now. Honestly, I think that's changed.
Hold on. Let me make my point. I think pace is important in the modern game, but it's also, like you mentioned here, it's about being mentally quick, and he doesn't have that, in my opinion. Great ball progressor. When United obviously have possession, he is a big part of starting the attacks. But fundamentally, as a defender, you need to be able to do what is going on behind you, being able to cover, being able to be quick in terms of decision making. And he's showing, as the season has gone on, that he's not a top centre back. And if United want to play, whether it's with Ten Hag, whether it's Pochettino, whether it's Enrique, all these managers are going to want to play a high line, and they're going to want their centre backs to be very good in one-on-one duels, to be quick, to be mobile, to win the ball back and start attacks. And Harry Maguire is very deficient. Lindelof as well, who I think has had a good season, but he's deficient in that area as well. United are going to have to bring in a new centre-back, whichever manager comes in.
And they're going to have to do that because they're not quick. It's kind of as simple as that. I don't think Lindelof and Maguire are unintelligible footballers. They're not. They're actually pretty good ball progressors when they play that game. So Harry Maguire last year was one of the best ball progressors in Europe. So the stats don't lie with that. Harry Maguire can do that. The problem is Harry is slow. So I think in the modern game, you just don't get away with it, Haider. The game is too quick now. Before you've even thought, like you look at this lot in this slide here, De Bruyne, Foden, Grealish, Silva. they are going to kill you in less than 1 second. They can make 2 passes within a split second and you're dead. And the only way you can stop it is by being quick. So this is why Virgil van Dijk can do it, because Virgil van Dijk is a thinker, but is also just physically quick enough. So this is the issue for Lindelof and Maguire, and it was for the partnership last year, is that you've gone and bought Varane to try and help that. But I think what we've seen now is that you're going to have to get rid of one of these two, if not both. They cannot be starters in the future for Manchester United. We'll talk a little bit more about Harry Maguire after we've done this segment on the game. But I don't think that you can expect Varane to look after one of these two week after week after week, because they're just slow. So, Victor Lindelof with the goal, as we said there, when he missed the header for Foden. So Foden does well to get his foot there, to get the ball going forward into the box. But Lindelof just kind of just jogs back in. What's that all about? It's because Lindelof knows he hasn't got the pace to get back, so he just doesn't try. So that's a problem. You need to solve this through sheer power and raw aggression. You need someone to come in who is quick, who understands that they're quick and can do it. Ideally, Eric Bailly would be a good choice for that. But Eric Bailly's game is so deficient in terms of what he mentally does that he's not a choice, is he? He's not really a player who could do that. If Phil Jones was a bit younger and didn't get hurt and injured as he could be an answer. He's got pace. He is brave. He would push up, but he makes mistakes. So all of these things kind of dictate, Haider, that you got to go into the transfer market. It's the only way to do it. Could Mengi do it? Could Tuanzebe do it? The answer to that is yes, but there's a big curve for them to become answers to this Manchester United defence.
And we have Glazonomics, Rob. We always have to take that into consideration. It's much cheaper to give Phil Jones a new contract rather than go and spend a lot of money, 60 million, let's say, on the new centre back, give him a 5-year contract, sign on bonus, etc., agent fees. So that's why these players who are, who should be shifted on at Manchester United get given bigger contracts, because it's cheaper to do that than it is to go and buy top centre backs, unfortunately. And that's United are in that situation. But let's move on to this second graphic here. As we've said throughout this podcast, City targeted Wan-Bissaka and Lindelof. They overload those wide areas. They absolutely exploited the channel as well in those half spaces. And, was it 2 of the goals or 3 of the goals came from that left-hand side? And it was just, Pep had figured that out, and it was just a pattern throughout the game. City kept on doing that. And look, Man United got destroyed in the end.
Yeah, again, I think a kind of just looking at this kind of slide here and the setup, and you could see what City ended up doing in terms of their answering with it, is that Foden just decided that he was going to stay in that free role. And I think what Pep does as well, and he does it really, really well, and Man United do not do this well, is that they allow Rodri to kind of anchor up a little bit further up when they've got the ball. You can see here where Rodri's playing. And what Rodri's doing is he's just kind of in the middle of the space there of Man United's front 2 and middle 2. And he just sits there. Like the whole game, he just sat there. He didn't really move a lot, but it just allows like an expression of freedom. And again, this is when we talk about engines and motors and being physically competent. Manchester City, they're all exactly the same. They're like carbon copy Pep Guardiola soldiers, aren't they? It's like he kind of takes them away, formulates them, and turns them into what he wants. Now, I could see that if Rangnick was the manager long-term, that he could do that for Man United. I think he could formulate a squad that does all the things of gegenpressing, and gegenpressing is absolutely the heartbeat of all the top teams in the world now. You don't get anyone that sits off anymore, plays low blocks, or does Mourinho-isms. They don't win. That's why it doesn't work. You play this kind of counter-pressing style. But it showed here as well with City that this is how they started to take the game over. This was early in the match, but the shape showed City's intentions that they were going to go and occupy the forward spaces and kind of, really play up against the Man United back 4 and cause problems.
A good point about Rodri, actually. Look, I mean, you can see how far he's sitting there. Obviously he's he's behind Pogba. But the reason, Rob, he can do that is because, one, Laporte and Stones, he trusts their pace and their reading of the game. And also you can see Walker and Cancelo push up as well. And that's the reason why. And Rodri's a very good passer, very underrated qualities of his game, breaks the lines. And, what United couldn't deal with. I mean, the amount of times, Rob, that Foden out and De Bruyne out muscled Lindelof and Maguire. It was embarrassing. And if you're going to lose those battles and those second balls, United are always going to struggle. I'm going to move on to the next slide as well. just to reiterate as well. Now, this is a really, really telling slide, isn't it? Again, you can see obviously Cancelo's pushed up. Grealish has taken more of a central position. Laporte was finding Grealish consistently. And, look at Cancelo. Look how free he is. And this happened time and time again in the second half.
It did. And this is how City exploited United's lack of nuance in their shape. So this is still the 4-2-2-2, but it kind of was switching to a 4-3-3, and Ranić was trying that in the game. He did it 2 or 3 times where they went to a basic 4-3-3, but then just were getting outgunned. And you look at someone like Laporte here, he knows in terms of, can I make this pass? Who have I got on here? So he could get that ball to feet there to Grealish, to Foden, but it's the Cancelo overlap. This is where Man United do this really poorly in the opposite end. Fullbacks have to overlap. If you overlap, you open up the space. So the one time that Man United did it really well was for Jadon Sancho's goal, was that there was an overlap. Jadon saw the overlap and brings it inside because he knows that the defence is going to go like that. It's going to open up space for him to shoot. But when you look at City and you look at how, again, they played a numbers game, Grealish, Silva and Cancelo are so close to each other. So look where Aaron Wan-Bissaka is. So Aaron Wan-Bissaka is not looking at one player. He's looking at 3. And what's Aaron thinking? He's thinking, what do I do here? How do I react? Now, he could do one or two of things. He could drop deeper, but then he's playing everyone on side. So he doesn't want to do that. Does he go to Cancelo or does he go to Silva and then leave Grealish just to run that middle channel? Well, neither of that is ideal either. It's difficult, isn't it? But when you look at the shape there again, and you look at what Lindelof should be doing, Lindelof, Maguire, and Telles should be shuffling across to make sure that back four is tighter. So if anyone runs, you've got a chance at least of keeping up with them. And looking at this shape here, United had no chance. The overload is so pronounced and so difficult to deal with that you can't do anything. Aaron Wan-Bissaka can do nothing here. But the problem there is the back four again is communication. And this is why, we're talking about it there, and you just saying about sign-ins and the Glazers and all of this. The Glazers have bought plenty, Haider. They've spent 1.2 billion. So they do go out. They went and bought Harry Maguire for 80 million quid, a world record fee. So they do go and spend the money. It's just, what do you spend the money on? What are you looking for? There's players that they could have got over the last 10 years that would have made sure Man United won a lot more trophies than they did. And that's because the Glazers didn't buy those players. So when you look at Aaron Wan-Bissaka and you say, well, you cost 50 million quid, mate, whose fault is that? It's not Aaron Wan-Bissaka's fault. It's not any of the manager's faults. It's the board. When Harry Maguire costs a world record fee, and you look at the other end and you look at Laporte and you look at Stones, who would both start ahead of him at Man United, wouldn't they? If you had John Stones would be the starter at Man United, but can't get in the team at Man City unless Diaz is injured at the moment. You'd be saying, yeah, those players would play ahead of them. So this is the issue, is that they will go and spend big, in the summer, Haider. They will. They'll spend a ton of money and they'll wag their fingers at all of us and all the people watching this show today. And they'll say, look, we do spend money. Look, we gave Ronaldo 25 million pounds to come to this football club this year. You lot shut up because we just bought the best player of all time. Doesn't work. It's a bad strategy because you're not building from the foundations up. It's like they're putting the windows in the house first and then deciding to build all the bricks, and it just simply doesn't work.
Yeah, spot on. Couldn't agree more. And look, we spoke about mobility a lot with Manchester United, and this backline lacks that in space. I think Wan-Bissaka has mobility, but the two centre backs don't. Telles is not great, when on the back foot. But that was the biggest problem, is that United can do this for a half, 60 minutes at a push.
Yeah,
but they
30 to 45 minutes.
60 is a bit of a push. Let's say 30 to 40 minutes. But they're just not mobile enough, are they, to counter-press City's shape? And just look at the triangles that City do create as well. And Cancelo and Wan-Bissaka had a really difficult time, and they exploited him time and time again.
Yeah, totally. And it was deliberate, So they looked at that. They probably looked at their kind of plans from last year and said, right, where are Man United really weak? All right, this guy, Aaron Wan-Bissaka, we can get at him. And we can definitely get at him if he hasn't got Varane inside him, if he's got Lindelof who can't run. So what this slide really showed at 3-1 with 73 minutes, this is kind of where United mentally capitulated. And you could see this, the mid-block just disappeared. So looking at United's shape here, you look at that back four again, doing what it's been doing the whole game. But you can see that United's midfield is completely overrun now. City got a kind of back three there in shape, just kind of protecting. But you've got, I think it's Bruno at the top end. Obviously, Pogba went off just before then. And United's ability to win the ball back had completely disappeared. So that was the end of the game, really. So I think Rangnick was right after the match, because he said when it was put to him, they said, did United just have a lack of effort in that last 15, 20 minutes? And he said, no, I don't see it as a lack of effort. It's just kind of they were completely shot at that point. It was very difficult to get back in the game because tactically and technically, City were way ahead of the curve. And City were just balling at this stage, weren't they? It's kind of like 3 or 4 of them, quick passes, we're through your mid-block. Your mid-blocker doesn't work anymore. Your back four is standing off now. In the first half, Man United's back four was trying to be brave, pushing up to the halfway line, trying to be tight. At this point, they were scared. They were going back. Lindelof's going, I'm not having a good afternoon. Maguire's going, I still can't run. And Wan-Bissaka's going, well, I've got to mark 3 players here. What do I do? I will also say about Tellers, not mention Tellers in any of this, but he was also bad. Didn't really help Maguire. Didn't drop him when he needed to. Didn't push up when he needed to over the whole game. He did overlap, I think, for the goal. But besides that, just not really good enough.
No, and this graphic here, we'll quickly touch on it. United going 4-3-3 from 4-2-2-2. And look, Rangnick was changing, wasn't he, consistently? And that's fine because you want fluidity and you want your team to be able to play multiple systems. But he was just trying, wasn't he, consistently to try and stem the City attack. It was just sustained pressure after pressure after pressure. It was almost like the same move, wasn't it? Consistently get into the wide area, especially that left-hand channel, exploit it, overload it, and look to play crosses inside or balls inside, accurate passes. I mean, I actually want to talk quickly about the goal that Morris scored, the second, his first goal. Sorry, Rob. I mean, that was he just switched off. He should never have been allowed to have a shot like that. I mean, it was a fantastic finish. What a great goal. But it's just, it's just switching off mentally all the time, making these mistakes. And, it was just a poor performance.
It's players living inside their own heads. I talk about it a lot because they're going up, well, this is my job. So I'm going to do this from a set piece. I got told to do X, Y, and Z. So I'm doing X, Y, and Z. So that's all right, isn't it? And then you kind of look at that goal and what did City do? What they did is chip the ball to the edge of the box. That's it. They didn't do anything brilliant. They just did it. And then you're giving Mahrez a chance, aren't you? You could see that they did a kind of basketball screen where the 2 players who would have come and addressed Mahrez just got physically checked. I think Marcus Rashford was one of them. So it was a horrible moment. But again, that goal comes out where Maguire, I think, gets a touch on the ball, but doesn't really help. Doesn't make himself big, doesn't show, doesn't sprint out. Why? Because he can't sprint. That's a problem. So I think for that goal, it was just, again, endemic of United's weaknesses. Just looking at this slide here, I'll talk a little bit more about the 2 10s at the very, very top end of the pitch. Because I think that if you play this team and this system against most teams in the Premier League, I think it works a charm. I think this 4-2-2-2 against a lesser team would have worked. So people talked about Pogba being at the top end. I agree with what you're saying. He didn't look particularly comfortable off ball because he doesn't play the position that much. But on ball, he's really, really good. You get the ball to his feet, you can do something.
Nice retention, held the ball up nicely.
You have got to also understand that this is the best team in the world they're playing. Like, forget it. This is Man City. They are the most real team in the country. We're Liverpool. So Liverpool and City do this for fun, so they would have had an idea that United would have tried this system. Now, this does not mean that in the weeks to come that Bruno can't play a false 9. This does not mean that Paul Pogba cannot be part of the attack. It just means that you have to do it against teams that are maybe not as good as Man City. So I would like to see this pursued. And I know that Man United fans watching this will be the opposite. They'll be like, no, I don't want to see that ever again. But I get a funny feeling it would work because it allows Sancho and Elanga to run those channels, and it means you can get bodies forward quickly. One last note to kind of end this. Before the Man City game, Man United under Ralph Rangnick have had more shots on target than any team in the league. Any team. More than Man City and more than Liverpool. So it does show that the systems and the changes have worked. What hasn't worked, Haider? This lot putting the ball in the net. And again, we had it again, like Sancho did score that goal. And I thought he took it well. But then he had another gilt-edged opportunity, didn't he, where he blazed it over the crossbar.
Yeah, he should
and I actually wanted Bruno there to just take a touch out and shoot himself because he's in the box. And you think, yeah, just drill it low. You don't need the extra pass then. But this is the problem with Man United, and Rangnick again has said it, is that individuals in the moment when they've got that opportunity to score you a goal have not taken that chance, whether that be Cristiano Ronaldo or any of the, going back all the way to the defenders. Literally everyone has failed in that moment in the box. But the system has shown that you can get shots off.
Absolutely. Lovely comment here saying, truly one of the best channels out there. Keep pushing, guys. We need more of this content. Guys, tell us what you want to hear, what you want to talk about, and we'll do it. We want to be forward thinking, don't we, Rob? We don't want to just be sitting here and reacting to games. And that's why we record a day after. It allows us to collect our thoughts, allows us to prepare like this, making sure that we're providing the best content that we can, well researched. And, now we are going to look forward to Erik Ten Hag. And the reason why we're going to talk about Erik Ten Hag, and I have actually done a show with Karan Tejwani, who is writing a book on Ajax and the Revolution. Definitely check that podcast out. It was a great insight into Erik Ten Hag in terms of some of his philosophies, his journey up to where he is now, obviously at Ajax. And he looks like he is now the front runner with United looking to make that appointment, or at least announce the appointment, Rob, in the next, let's say, 3 weeks. Erik Ten Hag now with Overmars gone, that's made him probably an easier option than trying to get Pochettino out of PSG. But when we talk about Erik Ten Hag, I look at this squad and I just think that, look, if you back him, I've got a fantastic tactician, someone that can really build a lovely brand of football and build a football club. But I look at the squad and there's so many deficiencies. The midfield's a problem. The fullbacks are an issue in terms of being comfortable on the ball. Defensively, the centre-backs are slow. They're good on the ball, but they're slow. United don't have a striker as well. Although, we did see Ten Hag play with Tadic, and you could maybe play the Bruno Fernandes role there. There are some players that will benefit from him. I think Donny van der Beek would be happy to see Erik Ten Hag come in, obviously. But we're going to talk about 3 players. And this is actually your opinion, and I agree with all 3. I genuinely agree with all 3 players that you've
Do it one at a time.
We'll do one at a time. So I'm going to let you go first. And I want you to tell the listeners who's the first player that Ten Hag will need to sell if he is to go forward and build a team that's capable of challenging.
Well, let's note it like this to start off with. This squad is not a Gunnar Solskjaer squad. We know that. This squad does not work under Erik Ten Hag. It just does not. It does not. It does not have the technicality. It does not have the physicality. It doesn't have the mentality. It's miles off what Erik Ten Hag would demand. Now, you expect that sometimes in transition, but this is why it's difficult to try and take one manager and go to the next. It's all very complicated. It's a Rubik's Cube. The first player that I think Manchester United do need to sell now, and it's a player I've lauded before, and we've just talked about him, unfortunately for him, is the captain. So I think with Harry Maguire, his time at Manchester United has come to an end for several reasons. I think last year he had a really good season. He helped United. He led United through tougher times. United's away record has been phenomenal. I think they've only lost, 2 games in 2 years away from home. So it shows that he's helped towards those things. His form was good last season. And then it kind of this year has fallen off the edge, both, I think, through injury and maybe through changes of personnel at the back. He's not getting any younger. He's not getting any quicker. That's a problem.
You know what shocked me, Rob? He's 29. I didn't realize how old he was.
Yeah, he's 29. And the thing is that his physicality is only going to go down. So we did see yesterday in that game of some of Man City's more waif-like players, maybe the Bernardo Silvas and the Phil Fodens, just absolutely push them off aside. Yeah, Lindelof and Maguire. So for me, you've got to look at the big wage earners. Yeah, if you're going to restructure this so you can give Ten Hag the weapons next year, and I guarantee United will buy. Like, this is not going to be some budget-friendly job and United go, oh, you can have someone for 10 million. It won't happen like that. United will go out and buy what they believe is the best in class. That's what they try and do. But it's whether they get the best in class. That's something completely different. I think that Erik Ten Hag is going to look at the centre-back and say, I like Varane and what Varane can do. Like, Varane himself's not getting any younger, and I think the injuries are a concern because He can't stay fit. That is an issue. But when you look at Maguire, you look at Lindelof, I think you could probably retain Lindelof. I think you'd probably move out Bailly. I think you'd probably move out Phil Jones. And I think that you have to now move out Harry Maguire. He is not going to really improve. His form might get better and he might finish the season well. Like he really might. He might kind of get it together somehow and it might all work out for him. But can you progress? Can next year Harry Maguire become a title-winning centre-back? I think because that's a big fundamental question. And it needs answering. The answer to that, unfortunately, when you project, is no.
I have to agree with that. And it's not like Maguire's an awful player, Rob. You know, he has some really great ball playing abilities and progression. He does, but the problem is the mobility aspect of it. And you can't really play that high line that you want to because you always whoever's playing centre back next to him always has to be careful, be mindful of the fact that Harry Maguire is slow and lacks mobility. And
stick him back in Leicester's team and he'll look great. Like he will. Like this is the thing. You put him in another team, put him in Wolves back line, and people will say he's worth 80 million quid. They would, because
everything's in front of him. That's why.
Exactly. So this is the whole thing, is that it is different for Manchester United. There is a difference. And again, I wanted him at the football club when he came, because if United were going to play a certain style of football and Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, it might have worked. Ole is gone now. You're looking towards Ten Hag. There is no way that Maguire will work under Ten Hag. It just won't.
Next player, Rob. I'm going to let you talk about him. I don't think this one's going to come as much of a surprise. I agree with it. The experiment hasn't worked. I'm sure people know who we're going to talk about. Experiment hasn't worked. Don't get me wrong. One of the happiest days seeing him come back. And I won't apologize for that, because he was my absolute favorite player, barring David Beckham, you know, growing up. But it hasn't worked. Age has caught up with him. He doesn't fit the sort of the pressing system. Any manager, whether it's Pochettino or Ten Hag, will want to be able to press from the front. They need more mobility, and you know, it's just age, isn't it? It's just age. He's been an amazing player, one of the greatest of all time, if not the greatest of all time. But if Man United want to move forward and build a team with sustainability and you know, which has youth in it, then they have to move away from, you know, the GOAT, really.
Well, if Man United want to sign some new players, which is what we're talking about here, and you want to give Ten Hag a chance in the transfer market, you need to get this £50 million contract off the books. 50 million quid they're paying him to not be able to press. So he scored, I think, 15 goals in 30 games. Is that something like that? Something like that, I think, overall this year. I think that's the figure. So he's got a 1 in 2 strike rate. It's kind of normal. It's not that bad, really. He's not really been scoring goals recently. We know he wasn't available for the game yesterday. What we'll just say about that is Cristiano Ronaldo was injured. Yeah, so forget everything you've read and that you've heard. He did have a hip flexor issue. That's been confirmed. So forget the whole narrative again that Ronaldo didn't want to play. I don't believe that for 1 second, and didn't when I first heard it either. It's just what it is. It's just, again, kind of press talk. But I think with Cristiano, it was always a short-term thing, and there was always a lot of risk involved. And what we've seen is that risk got Ole Gunnar Solskjaer the sack. It did. It was a huge part of it. And I think when you look at what Man United do now, like United are now trying to gegenpress. They're trying to do counter-pressing. At the start of the season, they weren't. It wasn't even a word. Man United fans didn't know what gegenpressing meant. So here we are now trying a complete cultural shift, doing it with a 37-year-old striker, with his backup being a 34-year-old striker. Doesn't work, does it? So you don't need to be a genius to look at these things and say this is what you need to do and what you shouldn't do. Man United will need to release Ronaldo off this contract. There's no doubt about it. So you paid a fee for him. You got him into the football club. You've paid him £25 million this year. You cannot pay him £25 million next year. You cannot. Get that book sorted, get him off the books, and find a way to reinvest that. Because you can go and get 2 very, very good strikers on 10 million quid a year, Haider, and still have £5 million in the bank. And United would be a better team. Not because you've got better strikers, but just because you've got strikers that do what they're supposed to do. That's not really Cristiano's fault. I'm not going to sit here and slag him off and have a go at Cristiano. That's not what this is about. People will say, you never wanted him, Rob. You never liked him and all this stuff. Again, it doesn't matter. This is about tactics. The next manager will want a mobile striker. I would not be surprised. This sounds funny. If Ten Hag comes into the team
Haller?
and plays,
you think it'll be Haller?
No. If he plays 4-3-3, it might look completely different to what Man United fans have ever really thought, because 4-3-3 is such a flexible system about how you play it. And it's going to be talking about the next player that I talk about in a second, because he's part of this conversation. But you could see Anthony Martial working that free just because of the way he plays in a kind of full
I agree.
style. He won't play high up. He will play a more technical style off the back four.
Yeah.
So that suits Ten Hag. Ten Hag likes that kind of game. You might see that it's Martial one side, Van der Beek the other side, and a proper number 9. So you talked about Haller, but a Haller style player. So you might see that as a front three. Now today we'd be like, what's that all about? You might see it that Jadon Sancho ends up being a false player at the top. Or you might see in that three that Bruno Fernandes does that job through the middle, because that's exactly what Ajax do. Ajax play those kind of systems. They do
Tadic,
it, you know, they rotate through it. You play it with Tadic. Tadic is very similar in, I think, mindset to Fernandes. You know,
something actually very, very interesting about Tadic as well is that people say that Bruno Fernandes wouldn't fit into Ten Hag's system. Well, if you look at their pass accuracy, they're very, very similar. So they're players that obviously try things. They're two players that aren't the best in terms of the economical, in terms of being on the ball. I mean, Bruno does frustrate the hell out of me, Rob. The amount of times that he does the he does the hero ball instead of playing the right one. It's just whinging and moaning. And I love Bruno Fernandes, but it's very frustrating. But I do think he's got a place in Ten Hag's system. But I think if he's going to play, I don't think he's going to play number 10. I think, you know, maybe someone like Van der Beek. But let's move on to the final player, because we have mentioned Martial. I know there's people that want to talk about David De Gea. We spoke about David De Gea last week. I'm going to go on record and saying that I don't think United should give him a long-term contract. I think United should sell Henderson and get another keeper and then phase De Gea out over the year. That's my opinion. There is issues with De Gea's distribution. He's at the top, you know, for shot stopping. He's at the bottom for distribution coming off his line. I thought the Mahrez goal, he could have come off his line quicker and made himself bigger. You know, that's what Ederson did, didn't he? For who had the shot? I can't remember now. It was against Bruno, I think. He came off his line and made that save. De Gea is a problem, but I don't think he is the biggest problem, in my opinion, and that's fine. Other people might think that. But Rob, the final player, you've mentioned Martial.
Yeah.
Who is it?
De Gea is like problem number 7 or 8, and this player we're about to talk about is much higher up in the problem stake. And the player that Manchester United should consider selling, I think now at this stage, again, you're looking at impact and effectiveness, is Marcus Rashford. So this is, again, you know, this is not me trying to prove that I'm neutral or that kind of like, you know, there's a hot take in here somewhere and that's what we're going for. I think that Man United star players, they're big earners, they're big wage earners, must impact winning. Harry Maguire is not impacting winning, he's impacting losing. Cristiano Ronaldo, he will score goals, but he's not impacting winning either. And then you got Marcus. So, you know, this is not a character assassination or any of those kind of things. Marcus is on a big deal already, and he'll be on an even bigger deal if he stays. Now, he has effectively got 12 months left of that contract. So it ends in 12 months. However, United have an option. So United will almost definitely invoke the option. So it kind of means that there's 2 years. It gives United time. But I don't believe for one second Marcus Rashford wants to leave the football club. I really do not believe that. But Marcus Rashford's form has gone out the window. So I think that this has been a long-term accumulation issue, Haider. He spent 2 years playing injured for Man United. Yeah. And he's never been able to recover his form. Now, I've had loads of people tweet me, tons. People go, well, he decided to go to play for England. He decided to not have his operation last year, blah, 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 blah. Well, footballers that care do that. You know, they put their body on the line and they say, I'm not going to take the operation. I want to play. He went with England to the Euros. He wants to win the Euros. Now, United fans don't care about that. United fans will be like, well, what not? But he's an England player. He's one of England's top stars. So he wants to go and play that. I understand it, whether I agree with it or not. But I think now we've just kind of got over the hill with it, Haider. And his form has crashed because of all the change at Man United. You know, a lot of what Solskjaer did in that 4-2-3-1 was about utilising Marcus Rashford to the side of a striker, yeah? I think we can kind of all agree on that, wasn't it? That was how it worked. It was about Martial maybe through the middle, Rashi running that kind of narrow channel and having those connections on the football pitch. Now that's gone because we're playing a different style. There's no doubt that Marcus Rashford's physicality is through the floor. He can't do this gegenpressing. He can't do it mentally or physically. Makes bad choices when he has to go and press, but actually physically can't do it. And you see it, and I don't know what it is. You see, he kind of almost pulls up and goes.
Maybe he needs a little bit of a change, Rob. Sometimes that's what you need. New environment.
He might need a change, or he might just need a new manager. Might just need a manager that comes in again and says, "Well, do you know what? You're good at this, and this, so we'll do a little bit more of that. But you're not so good at that, and we'll work on that, and we'll give it a year." Now, that's what happened. So, like, Donny van der Beek was at the football club for 18 months, and that was what he was told, but it never worked out. So he's gone to Everton. But his dream might be about to happen, because if Ten Hag gets the job, Donny van der Beek comes back straight away overnight. It's just what it is. It's, he's his boy. But does Marcus Rashford fit an Erik Ten Hag system? The answer to that is no, he doesn't. In the way that Martial might fit it, Rashford might not fit it. And that's the problem, because Marcus is all about straight line speed. Marcus isn't about precision, is it? Whereas Anthony Martial on his day is a baller. He can play one-touch football in and around that box, and combine with Sancho, combine with a striker. They can play almost with 3-10s at the very end, the top end of the pitch. Marcus Rashford cannot be part of a 3-10 system. This is why he's not walked back into the team now, with United playing a full striker in Bruno, because Marcus doesn't fit that. Just doesn't fit it. You'd have him wide, but then he's not going to cover the fullback because he can't get up and down. So I think that Marcus's time at Man United is running out, because when the contract's running low, United are going to have to decide that, do we give this guy £350,000 a week to stay for another 4 or 5 years? Yes, he suits the brand. Yes, he's a Mancunian icon. Yes, he's a great guy. He's all those things. But it's about winning, Haider. You have players that help you win. And this is where the Glazers have got to get smart, is that every transfer, every player that comes into the club and every player that goes out has to be about winning, not what number they're wearing and what their name says and how much it costs to put it on a back of a shirt, because this is the problem. So United have done this for too long. They've done it the wrong way for just years and years and years, and you now have to start clearing the ranks. So if you lost Maguire, you lost Ronaldo, and you lost Rashford, that's 3 big players.
Nearly $1 million, isn't it, off your wage bill?
But it's £1 million off your wage bill a week.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah, so 52 million a year, if not more. So come on, this is the thing. So this is when we talk about the business of football, you have to consider these things, because the Glazers do. And we've got to stop going down this path, Haider, of the Glazers don't spend money on transfers. They do.
No, they spend badly on transfers.
They spend badly.
They don't listen to the football. They don't have football men in footballing positions. They don't listen to, it's about shirt sales. That
distinction is really important for fans, because fans have just they mug themselves off by saying they don't spend the money. You spent £1.2 billion on a load of rubbish. That is the difference. So you have spent the money. You've sacked manager after manager after manager for different reasons, mainly because of underperformance and failure, but it's because of the players that you've bought. It's kind of as simple as that. I hear it now, like people talk about Daley Blind. I heard the other day, people were like, "Oh, we'll keep Daley Blind. We should have kept him." No, at the time he wasn't helping you win, so you had to get rid. You look at players through that 8-year period, and this has been the story of every player, is that when you got rid of Alexis Sanchez, you bought him to help you win, and he didn't help you win, so you got rid of him. And you did it with Romelu Lukaku, and you got rid of him. And it's just every player. Angel Di Maria, Radamel Falcao, Schweinsteiger, Schneiderlin, you've done it to all of them. They were all like the right signings at that moment in time for whatever reason, but they weren't the right signings. You picked the wrong player. Whereas City go and buy a Bernardo Silva, and you see the impact a player like that has. A Riyad Mahrez, you see the impact. You see what Kante's done at Chelsea. You've just got to go and buy the right players.
Jota. All these players.
Liverpool, I've just said it again. I've done on my other podcast.
Luis Diaz looks a right player, Rob. It's Luis Diaz is,
and not one Man United fan has ever tweeted me and said, "Do you think United should buy Luis Diaz?" Now they've said it about other top players all the time. You get United fans tweeting me, kind of going, "Oh, we should go and buy Haaland, of course. Someone like that or that ilk. Go and get Lewandowski, from Bayern Munich. Give him a year or two." You get all of that all the time, because United fans are very dialed into that way of thinking about superstars, and this is why the Glazers buy these players, because they want to sell these shirts. But the truth is that you need to go and buy young, hungry players that can do it, that you can develop, who are then going to go to the next level. And dare I say it, and I'm going to say it, United need to do it like Arsenal are doing it. Arsenal have gone and taken their primary young talent and they've gone, we're going to stick with these boys and push them forward. And Aubameyang, you're not helping on your bike. And you have to be like that. You have to be ruthless.
They've done a really they've done. Look, Arteta. I always felt that Arteta had a little bit about him, and a lot of people will disagree with that. But I always thought very early on he had a system that he wanted to play. He had a style to play. He didn't have the players to do that. He persisted. They've been poor at times as well. Don't get me wrong. But what they've really done is built it around Odegaard. They built it around Smith Rowe, Saka. They've made really good signings. Look, Ben White's been a good signing. Yeah. I think Gabriel's a good signing, and they're probably a striker away and a couple of other positions, maybe a right back as well. But I think, Rob, before we wrap up, let's just quickly, couple of minutes, what's the situation with Erik Ten Hag? I'm sure the fans and the listeners want to hear what's going on with him. He seems to have overtaken Pochettino now. I'd be very happy with either. I've said this time and time again. I always get tweets saying, "Oh, you want Pochettino? You're an idiot." All this sort of stuff. That's fine, whatever. I will back either manager. I think they're two great options for Manchester United. I do have slight concerns because this is a much bigger rebuild job than we thought. Probably 2-3 months ago. I didn't think it'd be that much of a rebuild as we're seeing now. But what is the latest on that? Because it does look like Ten Hag will probably go, and United possibly could be announcing that who the new manager is. They need to do it quickly because you can't be spending the whole summer waiting for the manager to come in, then chasing players, then end up getting Cavani 2.0 at the end of the transfer window.
I don't think it will be quickly because you've still got Champions League to play for. So if you get knocked out of that and you crash down the league, then maybe yes. But even at the moment, you're falling out of the top four conversation, but you're still in it. So you can't undermine Ralph Rangnick as it stands. Where are we with Erik Ten Hag? Manchester United have made contact with Ajax and made contact with the manager. So that's where we stand. And the first feelers I think that have been put out is that he is relatively keen. So that is the starting point of this conversation. The end point is to give him a contract that reflects that you believe in him, that you think that he is the long-term coach of Manchester United. We've talked about contracts before. So obviously someone like Conte, who's happy to do like 2-year deals, etc., etc., etc. I don't think Erik Ten Hag's going to come for a short-term deal here. He will want some real core guarantees. He will want guarantees about transfers and players. He'll want guarantees about the length of his contract. He'll also want the guarantee that if it doesn't start off well, and I'm talking for like a year, Haider.
Which very much, I think that will be the case. It's going to be a slow, especially if he doesn't get the players that he wants, Rob. It's because completely different style, possession-based, etc.
Manchester United as a football club do understand how far they are behind the top two. They do understand it. They're not idiots. So even though they're not football people and we've just been giving them a hard time about the board's decisions, etc., 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 the football club is totally aware that it needs to do this root and branch assessment. And this is really why Ralph Rangnick was brought to the football club, to be able to dig in deep, burrow beneath the skin of Manchester United and find out what really is the problems. Because this board are kind of hapless with that. They oversee it, but they don't really get it. It's difficult for them, but they do also understand that Liverpool and City are miles ahead. So what do? You make the investment with the transfer market. You give the coach the contract he wants. It's going to have to be huge. He's going to get a huge contract out of it, maybe one of the biggest in the world. It'll be up there with Guardiola and Klopp. There's no doubt about it, if not even bigger. And United will definitely make a song and dance about getting this generational coach from Ajax. Do I doubt if Ten Hag could do anything with this squad? I do. I think this squad is problematic for him. I don't think we'll be able to play possession-based football with him. I do think we can play the 3-10 style. I do think we'll be able to do that. I think Van der Beek could come back and have an impact, but it's a lot of if, buts and maybes, Haider. It really, really is. But as it stands, I think it is a race of one. I think it is Ten Hag or no one. I think the whole thing about Pochettino is that with his position at PSG, you never really know whether they want to sack him or not. And if they do want to sack him, then
it's a saving face, though, Rob. They're not going to turn around, aren't they, in the media and say, "Oh, yeah, Poch is doing the end of the season." It could very much change. If he loses to Real Madrid, you could see him out of the job. So then things change again. But look,
there's no way Ajax are going to say, "Oh, yeah, you can just have our manager and we'll announce it now." That's not going to happen. So this is the thing. If you want that manager, you are going to have to be patient. So this is why I've said all along, and I'll keep saying it, should have given the job 2-year contract to Ralph Rangnick, give him the actual job and say, fix this, please. And then if it doesn't work, then we'll go for someone else. But the problem is that you're just going to wait at the bus stop for the next bus to come along. And if it doesn't come for 45 minutes or an hour, you just got to sit there twiddling your thumbs. Now, Man United fans, unfortunately, have to take that as gospel. That's how it is. And that's what you're going to have to do with Ralph Rangnick, with Erik Ten Hag. But if he comes to the football club, it's going to take a lot longer than one transfer market. It's going to take maybe 2, 3, potentially 4, because a lot of players that need to leave, and you've actually got to go and bring the talent in that will come and do the job.
And we're going to finish on that note, guys. Thank you so much for all your fantastic, insightful comments. It's been a really fantastic show. Make sure you give us a follow on at TF Masterclass. Give myself a follow on Haider _Rubbani. And give Rob a follow on at _Rob_B. Make sure you check out the podcast I did with Karan Tejwani on Erik Ten Hag. We will be doing one as well. Myself and Rob will be doing a Ten Hag one in the coming weeks. So make sure you hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. It's a difficult season, Rob. I think United, they knocked it out of the Champions League. That could be it for us for the season. But keep the faith, and we'll see you all next time.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.